Hey guys, just before we get into it, we would like to acknowledge our podcast partners in Beyond Blue.
If you're feeling low, anxious, or need to talk to someone, please contact the people at Beyond Blue. Their phone number is 1300 224 636.
You can visit them on the website as well at www.beyondblue.org.au/get support. Enjoy the episode.
Thanks, guys.
Hey everyone, welcome back. We are in now for the second and third round. Sorry about the break, but looking forward to diving straight back into it. So here is where we left off. I won't go into too much more detail on whether we think that there were players that should have been taken inside the first round already, because we're going to be moving on to the second rounds. Now, just a heads up to the other podcasters, I'm not involved in the second rounds at all, and I'm really not involved in the third rounds at all either. All of my clubs are out. So the only picks that I'll be making from now are trades with future picks. So I'll be here more as a commentator. So continue on without me for the moment, and you'll hear me chime in when I'm ready for a trade.
Heckling in the back, John.
That's my preferred position.
All right, so with the first pick, Adelaide, Peter, take us away.
Yeah. I actually might use... look, I don't know. I want to make a deal with Ed now that he no longer has Downey to deal with, because I wouldn't mind having back-to-back picks here. I've got pick 40, and I would be willing to trade, say, Adelaide's second rounder next year for, say, I don't know what Hawthorn have off the top of my head, but if they had, say, a third rounder or something... I don't know. Is that something Hawthorn have, or is that something that Ed would be interested in, given you've got a ton of picks at the back?
Is that a future third rounder?
Yeah, like a future second rounder for Adelaide with my pick 40, so that he only drops back like 11 spots, and then that's for 29 and a future third rounder, which I think it's fair to say Hawthorn will finish above Adelaide by a fair bit, so it's probably a round and a half upgrade, so you might be getting pick 17 next year.
So I wouldn't exactly like to part with that 29, because that's kind of the reason I skipped on Danny's, because there's some players I had in mind at that pick, so I'm not going to take that deal.
I thought that might happen. So, Pete?
Okay. Who's the next? I'm worried the person that... Actually, no, I'm not worried about Ed. Okay, so... Is there something I can offer you, Michael? You're the next one down.
What have you got for me?
Well, I mean, I'll offer something different if you're willing to do a sort of that 40 for 30 and then exchange a second, like Adelaide's second next year for a third.
Yeah, well, Brisbane's going to finish a fair way above Adelaide.
That's almost... That could be potentially like 32, 33 places different. So, I mean, you could do a swap of future seconds would probably balance that out a bit better.
Yeah.
So you're moving up to
30 from 40.
And it's a swap of future seconds.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if... I'm quite wary of a bid coming in somewhere in this range.
So it's 432. How much is it? 446. So your pick 40's got more than the discount for your current pick.
I'm happy with that. Yeah, we can do that.
All right. Done. All right. So with that, the executed trade is that next year's Brisbane second round and next year's Adelaide second round will be swapped. So potentially, up to 18 places different. If they finish at the pointy and the bottom end, and that's for a 10-place upgrade now. So Peter, you've got yourself set with Adelaide. Shoot.
Yep. All right. So 28, I'd like to select Bailey Laurie, Oakley Chargers, because honestly, I wasn't expecting. I totally forgot he was still on the board. So another talented, upside player, someone who I think that. Honestly, that's why I also wanted to get rid of Michael, because I knew that he'd be sniffing around.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I knew I had to get rid of Michael, otherwise he wouldn't be there at the next pick. So that was the main reason behind it. But yeah, so Bailey Laurie obviously adds a bit more of that outside run, a little bit different to the other midfielders, obviously a little bit shorter, but he's definitely bulked up, bulking up that midfield area with a classy kick ability. And I feel like the 4 midfielders I've got for them is quite a bit of difference. So
I like it. Now we're over to Hawthorn with Ed. This is the pick that you would have had to have sacrificed for Connor Downey. So who was the player that you had better?
I reckon know who it is.
So there's a couple that I'm been debating about. So earlier on, I went for Riley Thilthorpe ahead of Will Phillips. So both of those were 2 mature age types. Well, not mature age, but like mature types that could come in straight away. So I'm looking at a midfielder again in this kind of area, and I'm looking at Sam Berry from Gippsland Power. He's got the endurance, he's got the toughness, and he's could straight away probably even fit into the forward line and add a bit of tackling pressure before going through that midfield and forming a dangerous tandem with James Warple.
You beauty. I know.
Very, very nice pick there. So I'll pass over back to you, Peter, where you're going to have Adelaide first, and then you're going to follow it up with Gold Coast.
Perfect. Well, Adelaide, the whole reason I did this trade is because I knew this player I'm about to pick, Ed wasn't going to pick. So I deliberately went for Laurie first just as a safety net. And I thought that I'd be reaching a little with this player, but also this player wouldn't be there at pick 40, which is the reason I've got it. And we did miss out on Tilthorpe. Now Baldwin's gone, so I'm going to go with Jackson Callow for Adelaide, and they get their key forward.
And Richmond hates you right now. It was
so does the Giants. The Giants are not very happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Richmond's hated Adelaide this whole draft, so I'm loving it.
I'm literally just sitting here looking at my next pick, and I've just crossed off the only players that I can pick there. So for Richmond,
it makes me feel good then, because I deliberately I was willing to offer more next year to make sure I got that sort of, I guess what you'd say, the last ready-made key forward type thing. So I was pretty happy with that selection. So
now for Gold Coast.
Gold Coast. This is going to be an interesting one, I reckon. There's a few that I'm tossing up with this pick because there's no obvious kind of...
Well, do they need the pick, Pete?
Well, they don't really, do they? But, I mean, I'm not going to just give it up. So, I'm weighing up between a few because I feel like there's a few in there that I think they would love to have. I feel like they're pretty complete up both ends. Just really stocking up their, best around going here. So, look, I reckon I'm going to take a punt because I think I can afford to with this. And I think I'll go with Zane True for this selection. Just ready-made midfield. I mean, they've got Will Phillips and Zane True are probably 2 of the hardest midfielders going around. So, yeah.
It's a good selection. It was definitely going to be in North Melbourne's pick 34, area. So good choice. So Melbourne's up next. That's me. And I'm really debating here. There's 3 players I really like. And I think for Melbourne at this pick, we're really looking for something a bit different. So I'll just give me 1 second. Yeah. So with this, we're going to take a real, I guess, a bit of a punt on this one. Not a typical Melbourne draft selection either. We're going to go for Fraser Rossman. So he's shot up this year, but he's basically 192, 194 centimetre kind of forward wingman, bit more of a utility type. He has a great goal sense. He's very different to what Melbourne has at the moment. We're looking for players that can create goals. We need guys who can hit targets, who create something out of nothing. Melbourne, I think, this year was just too dour. And so, we've picked up Cook to play a bit of a forward wingman role. I think with Rossman as well, we can kind of use them both in tandem together, playing up forward onto the wing, mixing up deep, really unsettle sides, and both of very good height as well. And I think probably the deceptive thing with Rossman is, even though he's 194 kind of size, he ran a 2.9 20-meter sprint, so he's got fast feet when he needs them. So that's who Melbourne's going to go for.
Nice.
And
Ed?
Ed's up next.
Mm.
All right, so after narrowly missing out on Jackson Callow, I'm looking for another big, beefy boy, and that player is Fraser Osman's teammate, Max Heath. So Max Heath is one I got to see along with Rosman at the start of the year before COVID hit, and he looked like a completely different player to the one he was last year. I mean, he's a player that wasn't even on the map, and then all of a sudden he has one big game against Oakley Chargers, and all of a sudden he's getting a combine call-up and he's right on recruiters' lips. So he's your big ruckman who likes to throw his weight around, can take a good contested mark and likes to tackle. So the Giants have been looking for some more ruckman. And Max Heath, he could be anything. He could be, your next Sam Draper, who's a physical player at Essendon, and Max Heath could be a similar type for the Giants for years to come.
That's a good one. I like it. He was, again, North Melbourne are very unhappy right now. Zane True and Max Heath now off the board. And it's really tough, this one.
Well, you and Mike will just have the next, 8 picks or so, 7 picks.
Yeah. And
so you two can just trade.
Game on, mate.
I'm just looking at it and I'm trying to think. There's two players I kind of want. And I'm wondering which way I go to see if I can get them both. So, look, I think when it comes to North Melbourne, we've addressed our key posts. We've got Heath Chapman and Logan McDonald. So we've got a couple of keys. Now we're looking for, I guess, building all the other areas. And we've got a good young core in the midfield already. But, I think just to provide... this is tough. I'm changing my mind on the spot.
Would you consider a future pick swap somewhere here, Shawnee? It would more be for your next pick, but it would mean that you only have one pick here, because I'm considering making an offer of either of the Western Bulldogs or Collingwood's future second round picks for pick 36 that North Melbourne have. Given that next year's draft is supposed to be a little bit stronger, you assume that there'll be less father-son academy players, so that pick will probably sit somewhere around 30s, maybe high 20s, depending on which club it is and how they go.
Yep.
And the Pies have someone in mind for those selections.
Yeah, so can I come back to it for the next pick?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah, I'm just letting you know in advance.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. I'm really torn here, guys. It was just one of those ones where this year, just not being fully across it, I'm not.
There's one player that I think North fans would be pretty happy with, to be honest, but I don't know if I can really give you advice as one of the other coaches.
Yeah, no, that's all right.
It's someone very similar to Zane True, so I reckon they would be very happy with, just quietly, if that helps.
Doesn't seem too quiet.
No.
Yeah, I'm sure you can work it out from that, but yeah.
Yes, I am just thinking. All right, so with this one, North Melbourne's going to take Luke Edwards, who's not attached to Adelaide. Adelaide's come out and said they are not going to nominate him, which I feel was a bit of a face-saving manoeuvre, potentially. Look, I really like Luke Edwards. His football IQ is fantastic. He accumulates the ball. He uses it nicely. I'm a little bit shocked that they wouldn't try and hold on to him. For Adelaide, I'm shocked they weren't able to nominate him or something. I think in terms of a player, he's going to be just a player. He's not going to be, his scope for improvement isn't as big as some of the other players that are still left on the board here. But I just think in terms of North Melbourne, it's about now just building good quality. They're going to come in, perform their role, and do what they need to do. And I think that's where Luke Edwards, he'll come into his own. He's 188, 189 centimetres, can play inside midfielder, can go off a half-back flank if we need. He hits the target. Yeah, so he's a high footy IQ player, and I just think with North Melbourne now, high football IQ is a good thing. We don't need the athletes just yet. Cool. We're over to Carlton.
Yeah. So it's my Blue Baggers first pick, and I'm really umming and ahhing. There are some players I really like, and some players I think that'll fit Carlton's needs. It's just, a matter of who I'm going to pick, because there are a few very close in contention. So I think Carlton's sort of forward creativity, efficiency, and run needs a little work, as well as their small forward stock. With that being said, I'm going to go with Jack Ginnivan from Bendigo, because I rate him pretty highly as well. I think he's just the kind of player that the Blues could do with going forward. Just provide a bit of a spark, can run pretty well throughout games, and just give a little bit of an edge to those key forwards, because Carlton have got obviously Mackay, Curnow when he gets back, has bowled up there, McGovern, so they need someone to deliver the ball, and Ginnivan can do that.
And that just takes another one off the board for North Melbourne.
Yeah, well, I'm making your job, I don't know, maybe a bit easier or harder.
Harder, because I think he was the only name I had left. He was the one I was trying to. I probably should have done it the other way. And
That's okay, mate. Collingwood is still here for you.
Yes, I can feel Collingwood breathing down my neck. So look, I think for North Melbourne, we're going to say no, just simply because we want kids in the door and develop them this year. We've lost a year, and it's been a tough year. Let's give David Noble a clean slate. So apologies, Collingwood. I think it was a great offer, but I'm going to say no.
You don't even want to discuss what a secondary offer might be? That's okay. That's all right. That's all good.
What's your secondary offer? If it's a future first for this pick, it's done.
It's definitely not a future first. I'm not Gold Coast. So don't have that many selections.
Wow.
Well, I mean, last year Gold Coast had a lot of bonus selections. It allowed them to play a little bit more. So the additional offer would be the swap of, so it would make it Collingwood's third and the Western Bulldogs second for this selection, and North Melbourne's future fourth. So it's also an upgrade from a future fourth to a future third. Just maybe another 10 picks.
Oh, that's very tempting. It's a very good offer.
There's a particular type of player around this selection that Collingwood would be looking to get. And there's a risk that if they don't get this selection, that they may not get that type of player.
Can Collingwood afford this type of player?
Yeah, thanks. They're just chucking in barbs for no reason here, mate. Come on.
Sorry, just had to throw it in. Sorry, mate.
Look, if it's going to make a difference to you, I can throw in what will be a pick probably in the late 50s, which is our next selection in this draft, if you want to make another pick in this draft.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so I mean, the end trade will be the Western Bulldogs future second round, Collingwood's future third round, and a pick that will it's currently sitting at 57, pick 57, to North Melbourne for North Melbourne's future fourth round pick, and pick 36. Now, there was a whole grand plan for this selection, and it's because of something that is, I don't know if it's annoyed all Collingwood fans, but it's certainly been frustrating to me, is the lack of genuine small forwards. We play a lot of people through those roles, but we rarely have a player that suits that role to a T. And there are two players at this pick that I would like. So what I'm going to do is make a call now to Richmond, who have the following selection, which is you again, Sean, and let you know that I'm about to place a bid on Maurice Rioli Jr., and I would consider a trade, just back one selection, if you would also give me your future third round pick for North Melbourne's future fourth round pick.
Yeah, I'll do that trade.
Okay. So switching those, so Richmond, you're on the clock. Collingwood recover their future third round pick. The future fourth moves to Richmond, and Collingwood are now pick 37.
Yep. You're updating, John?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So Richmond, with this pick, is going to place a bid on Josh Eyre.
Well, I was not expecting that.
Is that a spanner?
A little bit. That's that hurts.
What are you going to do? It's hang on, I want to give you the points. 305 points, so it's not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Your next selection easily covers it, and it'll probably stay within the draft as well.
Yep. Because I have in mind Essendon's other NGA and also what I've picked up previously, but I'm going to have to match the bid.
I was hoping you weren't. I was hoping the bid was early enough to throw you off.
No, you did. You did throw me off initially, but Josh Hare's a very good player. I think he didn't get, obviously, the amount of time he would have liked to showcase all of his skills, but the upside's certainly there.
Didn't get enough airtime?
That's right. And I was sort of refraining from using such a phrase, but I'm glad you did it, John. But yeah, no, exactly. Didn't get the airtime. I think he's still great value. And, at pick 36, a little high, but he's one of Essendon's own. And, he's going to thrive in that academy. He's an Essendon supporter as well. So, let's match it.
That will mean the difference is, what did we do? 305. So you'll have about 100 points left, which will put you, we've lost our 100 points, will put you pick 63.
Mm-hmm. Not ideal, but we'll go with it.
Sounds good.
Welcome to West Coast of the world.
Hey, West Coast is slowly rising, so...
Yeah, I know, we're just waiting for everyone else to match everything. We're good.
That's it. All right, well, that has kind of, again, Richmond aren't overly happy with it, but we got to... This is what happens with academies, so we just got to take it on the chin. Is the player I want there? Yes. All right. So with the next pick, continuing looking for a tall type forward, a little bit different to Josh Eyre, not so much a key position, but looking for flexibility and obviously having a pretty settled side. We're going to go for Matt Allison, who is 194 centimetre wingman key forward, so prototypical kind of utility. Really good endurance. I like the way he can move up and down the ground. Strong overhead. Has a pretty good ceiling for me. I think he's got to grow into his body. He's still a bit skinny, but at Richmond we've got plenty of time. He's probably come a bit early as well, but we're looking for I guess to replace Jack Rewalt's output. Maybe not Jack Rewalt per se, but his output. And we've got Tom Lynch for the next few years as well, along with developing Callum Coleman-Jones as a key ruck there who can play key forward. So I think Matt Allison floating up and down the ground would be a nice, handy little thing for Richmond.
Fair call, mate. And with that pick 38 that Collingwood has now got, they will select Corey Durden. So there was obviously the agreement as part of that original want to place a selection on Maurice Rioli Jr. that they would not place a bid with the pick that they traded back to. And the only risk really there was that Richmond were going to make a selection of Corey Durden, but I didn't feel like, given their depth in that sort of position, that they would be requiring two players of that sort of build. So always felt that he was going to be available, and really comes into Collingwood as a player that could potentially be playing next year. I like the way that he goes about it, picks up the ball well at his feet, is a relatively damaging shot for goal, can really light it up, and it's probably, he probably just hasn't grown. That's probably the biggest thing for him since really under 16s, where he was a star, and probably thought that he would grow a little bit more. But he's definitely got the upside. So very happy for Collingwood to get him.
There's another small forward that was there that you could have picked as well. That I think Michael's pretty lucky I haven't had enough picks in this round, but it'll get through.
If Richmond didn't have enough small forwards to go around the table already, I believe this player that you're talking about would have been selected.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Michael,
yeah,
Carlton, are Carlton going to do it?
No, I know what they're going to do now.
What do you think I'm going to do?
Oh no, I reckon you're just going to serve some payback in a second. But anyway, continue.
I don't know about that. I'm thinking more of a straightforward route. I do have my eyes on a small forward, but I think Carlton also needs a third ruck, so I'm weighing that option up because a bit slim with Sam De Koning and Mark Pittenay at the moment. So a developing type would be pretty handy. And I've just got Jack Ginnivan. So Connor Stone's in the equation. I would have liked Durden, but I'm going to go with James Rowe, a mature ager from Woodville West Torrens.
Nice.
Good selection there. Mm-hmm. Fits with Carlton's list profile as well.
Yeah, I think the direction the Blues are heading, they need to make some statements, get that kind of age group in as well. I think he's 21, 22. So, in a couple of years he'll be kicking bags of goals, hopefully, and we'll be in the finals.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, and I'm up next with Brisbane as well. So this is going to be a really straightforward one for me. I'm going to jump straight in with a bid for Brendan Walker.
Yeah, there's the payback. I was waiting for it. If this was realistically on draft night, this would be the quickest match in the history of matches. Absolutely no problem. Looking at that, look at this, 287. I've still got 50 points left over to go to the bank with. This is a steal. So very easy decision for me. I just hope that maybe someone with Hawthorn multiple picks might return the favour pretty soon.
No problem. So that's a match for Fremantle. Do you want to talk us through Walker a little bit?
Yeah, well, I think the reason why Brisbane would bid on him, and I was looking at him before the sort of trade occurred as well, between Pete and I think, Brisbane don't need too many areas to improve on, but that running half back is an important one. They've obviously got rid of Witherden. Birchall's aging. Daniel Rich is sort of turning the corner. So I think, he would have been a great fit for Brisbane, just as that really creative halfback who can run and gun and take the game on. But at this kind of range, they're not going to have access to him for sure. So, with that said, I'm going to go for someone that maybe I can get access to. And looking down the list, there's some really nice types with upside. I'm kind of feeling this mature age trend, and I'm going to go for a player of a similar position, almost identical, in Jacob Ware from Woodville West Torrens once again. I have watched them a number of times, but that's not the only reason. I think he's a quality player. He's got the age profile as well that Brisbane might need just to keep on attacking, keep on getting in that premiership window, and obviously suits the need as a creative kind of halfback who's got a bit about him, really good ball user, can mark overhead. I just think he's one of those who might be ready for the next level and would be worth a punt given he's showed his worth this year.
Nice.
I just want to. Sorry,
I was going to say certainly not one I'm aware of, to be honest. So
he's one that I think I put like a minute before we even started this. I added there. So thank you, Michael, right before my picks for identifying that name I'd snuck in at the end. But yeah,
thanks for reminding me.
I was actually going to see whether Hawthorn might be interested in something from West Coast, potentially, given you got 3 happening.
Well, I plan on using all 3 of these picks, mate.
Actually, before we get there, boys, I'll just wrap up the set. Actually,
yeah, go for it.
We haven't heard from John for a while. So, John, do you want to wrap up the second round for us?
Do I ever, mate? I've been pretty enthusiastically waiting here in the background. And I guess, look, really, after you see like a long first round, the second round really comes in quite short. And the same thing will happen with the third round because of those match picks, which does allow clubs to sort of advance. So you've seen a fair change in the draft shape for probably the back half of the draft here. But with the first pick of the second round, Adelaide and Peter selected Bailey Laurie. Then it was Sam Berry selected by Hawthorn with pick 29. Jackson Callow, the big Tassie kid, selected by Adelaide with pick 30. Getting a really balanced draft there for Adelaide. Gold Coast selecting Zane True, another big midfielder, to join their midfield brigade and keep them, seeing them move up the ladder. Melbourne selected Fraser Rossman. I think this is where we start to see Melbourne typically select a player around this pick each year that slightly surprises. I mean, he's a good player, but is potentially a little bit higher than what you would anticipate that he would be. Max Heath with pick 33 to the Giants and Ed there. Luke Edwards, the father, son, and not matched or not eligible because Adelaide didn't nominate him. Adelaidean SA kid, so he's heading to North Melbourne with pick 34. Pick 35 and Carlton selected Jack Ginnivan. Sorry, I butchered that. Ginnivan. Pick 36 and Essendon. I think this was a match.
Yes, it was.
If I'm right. Yep. And that was Josh Eyre. Richmond, then there was a trade where Collingwood traded a handful of picks to move up and get a pick, and then traded back one with Richmond, which is why there's been this shuffle. So Richmond fell into the 37 position and were able to select Matt Allison, and then Collingwood selected Corey Durden with pick 38. Pick 39 and Carlton was James Rowe. Pick 40, Brandon Walker was bid on and matched. Fair enough too. And pick 41 was Jacob Ware. And there was some questions about his whereabouts on the spreadsheet, but he was successfully found. Save the last for later, guys. I can tell you're swallowing them pretty hard over there, but we've still got a round and a pick to go. So what's interesting, and I think that we can just do a quick scan before we start the third round. There was only, like 14 picks or 13 picks in the second round of the draft. And there'll be similar, probably 14 or 13 or even 12 picks in the third round here, just because of the way that the picks are sort of moving up with all of the bids. So there'll be a couple of short rounds, which will actually mean that the third round of the draft will, after the long first round, which went to 27, the third round will actually come in under where the third round normally finishes at pick 54. So that's assuming no more matches and no more bids, but there may be some more of that to come. So over to you, Ed.
Yeah, funny you say that. Hello, Michael. The Brisbane Lions, I would
Oh.
like to place a bid on Blake Coleman.
Yeah, gonna match that. Don't even need to think about it.
Bloody hell.
And I'm glad you have, because I don't really want some of the picks I've got. So yeah, cheers for that.
Happy to help.
Jeez.
Why have you taken Coleman there, Ed?
Well, he's right in that type of area that I've had with a few of these other players that I really like. Now, he's just a very classy small forward, very crafty around goals. He tackles. He very good overhead for his size as well, so he's got a lot of tricks. He's one that probably has to work on his motor a bit, but in the long term, he looks a very special player.
Yeah, I have to say, Ed, definitely agree with you on all those fronts. And I think Brisbane fans would be really excited to see what he can bring, given his brother Kadeen has really hit the ground running, sort of coming into that team this year and making his debut up forward. So, yeah, Blake's a really exciting prospect and arguably a little bit higher touted as a top ager, definitely.
Yeah, and I think if North Melbourne had have held on to their pick that went to Collingwood, they probably would have made the bid about 5 positions higher as well.
Sweet. All right, you're back on, Ed.
All right, so I'm very happy to find one of the players that I was debating with that other pick for Hawthorn still on the board, and I'm very happy to see a couple of other players as well that I rated above Downey still available on the board. So the first pick is the one that would have been debated with Sam Berry, but is Luke Pedlar.
Damn it.
From Glenelg.
That's why I wanted to trade for Ed's pick, because I knew he was going to pick it.
Yeah, I think I know what the next one will be as well. But...
Yeah, so do I. Yeah, I reckon we're on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Luke Pedlar, talk us through Luke Pedlar.
Yeah. So Luke Pedlar is probably the absolute quintessential bull of this draft. He has no fear, head over the ball. Got a lot of burst as well, so he can actually burst away from the stoppage. He's a very good tackler. He's actually very good overhead and a good, strong player forward of centre as well. He's had a few injury troubles, but they're mostly contact type of injuries. So he's fearless, and he's one I think Alistair Clarkson will really love.
Nice selection there for Hawthorn. Who are they going next?
Now, I've taken quite a few players that are ready. This player will take a few years, but I just can't pass him up at this point, and that is the talented key forward Liam McMahon from the Northern Knights.
Okay. Do you want to talk us through McMahon?
Yep. So Liam McMahon, very, very good athlete, tested really well at the Combine. He's got a fantastic leap, and unlike a lot of players that have a good leap that they test well, he actually uses it in a game. So he'll really jump at the ball, mark it at the highest point. He's a very, very good mark overhead, and he's also grown a bit as well. He was only the 193 centimetres last year. He's gone up to 196, so he's still growing. So I think he's a really good upside pick.
Good selection there. Certainly will help Hawthorn develop going forward. So now you've got your third selection in a row.
Yep, and surprised to see this player still here, and that is going to be Connor Stone from the Oakley Chargers. The very talented half forward. Played some fantastic games last year as a bottom major, kicking 5 goals in one game, and was one of their good players in the final series as well. Saw him at the start of the year playing against the Northern Knights. They played him on a wing, and he looked pretty good there, selling candy, and that looked like a role he was probably going to play a little bit this year as well. So he was potentially going to be pretty much Braden Cook. So playing the exact same role, he's exactly the same height. So if he'd played a full year, he might be where Cook was getting taken in that that 20s range.
Yeah, I might add to that, Ed. That's a bargain of a pick, and I think I agree with you. We've done player comparisons with Stone and Cook, and they're quite similar, obviously, virtually identical in their attributes and physical makeup. So a great pick there. I know you're really keen on him, and yeah, given he played on the wing with St. Kevin's in school footy, so he's definitely one who can develop into that role really easily.
Yep, and he was Melbourne's selection. I was hoping he was sliding. Yes, so look, with Melbourne's next pick,
West Coast would be willing to make a deal for Melbourne potentially if you. Depends if you.
I don't think I am, to be honest. because I think before, I'm just checking something. I think before this, before the podcast, we spoke about this player, and I found out that he wasn't actually linked to the Gold Coast Suns, and he's a player I'm very keen on. So I'm going to go for Melbourne's going to take Brodie Lake at this selection. He may not go there on draft night. He might slide all the way, but since they haven't nominated him, that means that Gold Coast can't match. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, beautiful. So, outside midfielder again, we're looking to address our problems, which is outside run, and obviously trying to create goals. Brodie Lake, he came down and played in the Sandful this year, and I believe he played kind of all over the ground. He's a very, very much a utility type player, which Melbourne seem to like. Having just let Hannon go, he could play a few different positions. We've drafted a few different ones. This guy's a little bit smaller. He's just a nice, handy, good package. I think that for Melbourne, this sort of player is something we could develop into kind of anything, and really look to have him impact around the ball as an outside midfielder. So I'm pretty happy with that.
Would Geelong be interested in a trade with West Coast?
No, because Geelong's going to finally fix their ruck issues.
Yeah.
And we're going to go for the local boy, brother of number one draft pick, obviously Sam, and that's going to be Henry Walsh. So, obviously with Geelong, even though we're playing for the now, given we haven't had a ruckman, a good ruckman for probably since Brad Alton's retired, we're going to start developing one now. So Henry Walsh, to me, is probably the best developing ruck available still. I know there's a few guys out of the waffle who have had all right years as well in Caelan Lane and Shannon Neal, but I think for Geelong, we're probably going to stick with our local boy in Henry Walsh. And it's over to Ed.
All right, so sticking on the theme of Geelong area, so earlier on we picked Oliver Henry for the Giants, and we're going to pick his teammate Cameron Fleeton, the talented halfback, left footer, really good kick, very good interceptor, very good competitiveness, even though he's still a developing size. I really rate him, and he had some great games, especially last year, keeping Jackson Callow to just the one goal. Who was dominating the NAB League. He's definitely one that I think could really develop into even a midfielder if you want to give him the chance. He's got that competitiveness, he's got that size, and I think he's pretty good value at this range.
Nice.
Yeah, nice one. I like Cameron Fleeton, one of my favourite players from last year in that Geelong side. Obviously, had a lot of bottom ages last year who are coming on this year, and he was one I was really excited to see how he would develop, and might have been in consideration with my Brisbane pick next. However, that is no longer feasible. So, look, the Lions, this is a tough one because, again, there's not really too many areas they need to fill. They probably would have expected maybe to have a couple of these picks sort of taken away with academy bids earlier. But what I'm going to go for is a young fellow called Ryan Angwin from the Gippsland Power. Not because Pete likes him and not because he's another country boy, but I think he fits the sort of Brisbane style really well. He's got the comparison to Xavier Dersma in that he just really likes to attack the ball. He's a bit sort of light on, but it doesn't worry him. He can play on the outside, but it sort of has that toughness for the inside as well. His rate of development's been exceptional, and I know he's one that the Power really, really liked and wanted to see move on to the inside this year. So he's a good high upside pick, and I think Brisbane fans will like him.
Yep. Now you've
How
got
you doing over there, Peter? Sorry.
No, I was just wondering like whether Michael want to take any more of my favourites while he's at it. He's literally taken every single one of my favourites. I'm glad I got Hollands at the start, otherwise I wouldn't really have any of them.
Yeah.
Nah, he knows who I like, put it that way. So, yeah.
I think we just have
Wow.
similar
Anyway.
taste.
Yeah.
So it's what happens when you sit next to each other.
Well, luckily enough, I haven't had to sit face to face
Yeah.
with him too much this year, but yeah,
Yeah.
certainly. No, look, Western Bulldogs next up, and another tricky one. I think I'm looking either ruck or small forward, leaning more towards ruck. And Sean, I take your Henry Walsh, and I reply with a Shannon Neal.
Yeah, yep.
So,
If
reason
I was West
being,
Coast,
yeah.
I'd be pretty unhappy.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't be too disheartened if I was West Coast because there's a certain Carlin Lane down the line potentially. But Shannon Neal definitely, I think, has a good amount of upside given his running capacity as a tall. He's one who's pretty flexible in that he can go through the ruck but also play forward. And he hasn't really played that much sort of high-level footy. So he's one who's really just sort of motoring along and continuing to develop his game. And I think he's come on pretty quickly in the last couple of years. So I'd be happy as for the Dogs to get another West Australian ruck in and one who just has that point of difference in that he can develop in another position as well, potentially.
Yeah. So look, it's a good selection. I mean, if Henry Walsh wasn't on the board, he was my next pick for Geelong. So it's a good one.
All right.
And now you're up again with Brisbane.
Yeah, I just don't really want to keep this pick. So if anyone has a player in mind that they're really keen on.
I could come up from West Coast because I've got some things to do.
Well, what are you going to offer me?
Well, I mean, what do we got? 50.
Yeah,
I'll move up 3 spots. What else do I got? I've got. Well, I mean, what picks to Brisbane? I mean, I've got Sydney's 3rd rounder next year. So if you had Sydney's 3rd rounder, does Brisbane have a 3rd rounder? Because that's probably going to be a good gap.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brisbane's 3rd rounder next year. That'll end up being 10 picks, 10 plus picks.
Okay, yeah, no, I am happy with that.
Yep.
I can sign off on that deal. Thank you very much.
Cool.
Take it and run. Mm-hmm. And with that, West Coast finally into the draft. And Brisbane will slide out. So with pick 51, we're over to you, Peter. And I'm hoping you're not going to do what I think you're going to do.
I would like to bid on Taj Schofield, thanks.
Yep, I thought that was coming.
Skillful, small forward. I just think he's, at this stage of the draft, I'm pretty keen to get as skilled as I can, and I think that he's good value at this selection.
So I only have to match 49 points, which will drop me 3 positions for Port Adelaide, so that's a bit of a no-brainer. We will take Schofield, and you are back on the clock.
Cool. All right. With the next selection, I'd like to bid for Maurice Rioli Jr. Thanks.
Yeah, that's no problem. I knew you were going to do this, and I was almost going to interject on your trade.
I mean, let's be honest. Yeah, it like they're getting value at this pick. Like, yeah.
So for Richmond, it's a bit of a no-brainer again because they're just going to drop 2 places. And I can probably still even talk through the selections that were potentially going to happen anyway. So with that, it's over to you again, Pete.
All right. So the next selection, at the risk of sounding exactly like Dodoro or someone else that's Carlton a few years ago, I'd like to bid on Carter Michael.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, because you're not guaranteed to match it, but he's someone that I'd be keen on. So I'm happy to. If you're not going to match it, that's fine. Because I'll say the reason first.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I'll say why. Because obviously Lewis Jett has been let go by West Coast, and they've got some good ones coming through in Liam Duggan and whatnot, who I think could progress into the midfield. The reason I've sort of picked Carter Michael is I think he possesses some of the skills with his kicking, particularly the penetrating kick off that half back, and I think that he's someone who is great value at this end of the draft. And honestly, I'd be happy for anyone to pick this type of player at this range of the draft, and that's why I'd be more than happy to take him on.
So just looking at actual points matching, pick 36 points, which is the equivalent of pick 70, is all that's needed to match this bid. And I guess, what are Brisbane doing?
Well, Brisbane,
considering they've got 55.
Yeah,
So
you go for it.
You going to match?
No, I'm not. I think, look, I don't mind Carter-Michael. I just think that Brisbane won't be looking to bring in that many players, and they would be better off, I think, just bringing on the remainder of their academy guys as rookies. I just think that's a better strategy for them. So I'm happy to let Carter-Michael go, as much as I like him. Not too fussed about that.
That's right. I was running out of people to bid on, so
not Tariq Newchurch.
I'd already bid on half of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Well, I was crying out for someone to bid on these Queenslanders, and no one was. So I'm glad someone has now. So, but yeah, no, Carter-Michael. Look, he'll fit perfectly. I think he'll play that Lewis Jetta role. I think he's one of the best. There was another one I had in mind for this pick. Had it got through, had this matched, and it wouldn't have been a bid. But I'm content with bringing Carter-Michael.
Is that Carlin Lane you're looking at?
He's in the contention. He was one of them, but not necessarily. But yeah.
Is that was that now the final?
I think that was.
Draft?
Yes.
Yeah, because
every club's picked.
Yeah, so every club is picked. That was because West Coast traded up and then bidded on a lot of players. It sort of, that was going to be the first pick of the fourth round, but because West Coast traded up, we've ended up going all the way through the first 3 rounds of the draft. And as we said, finished before pick 54, which is actually a short. Draft. So it's interesting in that way. Is there anyone that when you look at the outstanding players that you're surprised is still left on the board, or that you'd be if you're another club? I know that this is a stage of the draft where a lot of clubs like to shuffle picks. So there'll be clubs that won't be taking any more selections at this stage of the draft.
Yeah.
There'll be other clubs that'll be going. I'm St Kilda at 56, Western Bulldogs at 60, and Western Bulldogs might trade pick 60 to St Kilda and a future fourth rounds. There's a lot of those sort of 2-for-1s happening at this end of the draft, so people can get the player that they're looking for. Is there anyone that we really think?
Yeah, I have one.
Yep.
So if I was Port Adelaide, and the bid for Taj Schofield is pretty reasonable, and I think Port's pick only would have slid to pick 56 anyway, so he might still be there in this draft. I'd be going after Oliver Davis. I really rate him. Nice inside mid from Tasmania, and I just think that they've probably got 3 spots to fill. So they've taken obviously Lockie Jones and Taj Schofield being the 2 that have been bid on out of the academy, and just bringing in another inside midfielder, who could potentially play this year as well, which will fit nicely on the list. I would be very keen on that if I was in Port's shoes.
I think a few of the South Australians as well might raise some eyebrows, like Zach Jamesny. Obviously, has been pretty highly touted from a long way out. He's the kind of player who might not have, I guess, the hurt factor of others, but if you're looking at a guy who's versatile and has clean skills, he's the one. He's one who's obviously had his name spoken of a fair bit. You look at Charlie Lazaro as well. I think he's one who was looking to develop as a small forward, but has a lot of nice traits with his speed, agility, and just his general character and work rate on and off the field. So they're ones. I think Tariq Newchurch as well. Obviously, Adelaide would love for him to get through to the rookie draft, but no guarantees there. He's on his talent. So, there's a few there that you'd say are pretty unlucky.
And probably looking at clubs so the clubs with some coming up picks. So North Melbourne's got a pick coming up, and even the doggies have another pick. So, you know, for them, I would be looking, you know, potentially for a developing key forward, and Josh Treacy is, or Treacy, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Apologies there. But he'd be kind of someone for those clubs I'd be looking for a development as well. Just a nice big kid who can potentially come on.
Yeah,
You know,
I'm going to be interested to see this year of how many picks actually do get used.
Yeah.
Like you got to expect that this year's draft is going to be one of the shorter drafts of all time, really. Given that lists have sort of been changed around at the last moment, so a lot of clubs are only looking to use really only a couple of picks, and we may even see some late third round picks passed, just depending on list sizes. So I mean, we're looking ahead at who has the next 15, 20 picks between 55 and 72. But I assume that a lot of those picks won't get used and people will be trying to push down into the rookie draft.
I think Brisbane will pass because they've got a pretty full list. Don't think St Kilda wouldn't have much interest from the next one.
Yeah.
Collingwood has a few. Collingwood will probably move up because they've got to now make up. They've got enough potentially for as many as, 4 or 5 spots with more time. They're down to 34 now. So
yeah, you're right. And so they might, I mean, they could just use the next 3 selections that they have. At the moment, they sit at 63, 68, and there'd probably be a 5th round pick as well that we're not thinking about. But they could end up all being picks in the 60s, depending on passing. So be interesting to see how that goes. I'd be one more player just that I'm interested particularly in, not necessarily at where I think he would get taken, but I'm interested in your opinion on Lachlan Jenkins and what you think that he might have done with a season of football, because his bottom age year was pretty exceptional.
Yeah, I mean, he's one I saw a fair bit of with Oakley, and obviously cracking that midfield late in the season with Rowell, Anderson, and Phillips in it is no mean feat, and he was able to do that. So I think athletically his testing doesn't really show it, but he's got a nice little burst away sort of turn of speed from congestion. He's really tough. And yeah, I mean, he would have had a full season of NAB League footy, given he was free of, school duties and things like that. So yeah, I mean, his numbers and bottom age resume sort of point towards a lot of good things, but he just might not be the player sometimes that screams out, stand out, given he's a little smaller and doesn't sort of have that outward explosiveness.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting that it's quite, with some of the players that really we didn't see this year a whole lot. They tested, we had some trial games, but really we didn't see much more of the Victorians. That it's easier to project forward traits, exciting traits, and how those would develop.
Yeah.
But it's actually quite hard to project forward consistency. So I know that I was somebody that selected Finlay McRae at 12, but I can probably see him sliding a little bit on draft night, even though I think that he would have put together a really good resume. And it's similar with Lachlan Jenkins. He's someone who I probably think would have been in line for either a position in the Vic Metro squad or even like league MVP in the NAB league. Is a really handy player, but without actually doing it, you don't have the athletic resume as well to sort of show up and say, hey, pick me. So it probably hurts kids that probably were looking to put forward a consistent resume rather than the ones that have traits.
Yeah, and another one in the same boat is Darby Hipwell from Sandringham. Kind of similar player in a way, in that is inside leaning. But yeah, this was going to be a year where both of those guys missed out on the AFL Academy intake, and they were going to prove everyone wrong. With their seasons, and a guy like Finn McGuinness was similar a year beforehand. Obviously he had a few more traits. He had the size, and things like that, but he still had a lot to work on. And yeah, these are players who are similar in that sense for sure.
Yeah, Hipwell and Jenkins played against each other at the start of this year, and Hipwell especially looked to have trimmed down a lot. Like he really looked like he was going to have a big year this year, and I think he'll definitely be one to watch next year, because I think he'll be an absolute ball magnet for the under-19s comp.
Yeah, I think that's probably the other thing that I've really looked at when I've looked over this year's draft is that I think there's a lot of really there's some players who are pretty speculative, and that with the shift to the under-19s comp, I wouldn't be surprised if teams are willing to just pass on them, like the guys you're talking about, let them put together that resume, and then look at them as 19-year-olds. And that's a great thing that I love now. They're pushing that draft age a bit, the under 19s rather than under 18s. Is that it just the guys that haven't really had a shot this year are now going to be able to go put together their good resumes and really have a crack at it. So I think it's there's some interesting ones still available looking at it, but I don't think this draft gets into the 60s, to be honest.
No, I'm with you there. Yeah, there's a lot of what ifs, and that's why like even a guy like Rosman taken at 32, that for sure could happen. But yeah, as you say, clubs could look at him and think, look, I just want to see him play a full year of NAB League footy, and that sort of crystal balling, how much of that will clubs do will really be a massive determining factor. And I think if you get to about the 60 mark, there's going to be clubs who want to keep a spot open so that they can potentially pick these guys up in those mid-season drafts down the line.
I think it's interesting because looking over what we've drafted and everything, I think I'm the one who made the Rosman selection, and part of it is I do have an attraction to large midfielders, and he does fit into that. But I think it's also there are just the kids who are of the right physical shape that if you pass on them now, I don't think Rosman. I would be surprised if Rosman didn't get drafted this year. I don't see clubs sending him back because he's 193-ish centimeters. He's quite tall. He's got a lot of X factor about him. You'd rather have him in your system for a year than leave him in the TAC Cup where he could potentially push himself into a top 20 selection next year.
And that's where those athletic traits come in.
Exactly.
Is selecting players that could become high selections. It's a lot more risk and reward in the pick, but you're potentially getting somebody that's worth more. And given you haven't seen a whole lot of them, maybe they could be that player. It's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out. I mean, do you guys have any closing comments before we wrap up the podcast?
Look, I think most of it, it was fairly... There were a few sliders, like everything, and a few bolters. I was lucky enough to have Adelaide, which had such a great hand, so you're able to manoeuvre it a bit. I think what I found with the draft is I think we kind of get used to what each other likes, or particularly Ed, Michael, and I, so we were trying to almost jostle to get ahead of the people knowing who was going to potentially pick next. And then obviously we had your list of rough order there too. But yeah, it was just a case of sort of, I guess, trying to work out how we could best get in there. And it didn't always work at first. But I think most clubs would be happy with what they picked. With what they ended up with.
Yeah, and just on that before you other guys wrap up as well, I think that's actually how things end up playing out on the night.
Yeah.
Is that really clubs are sort of fighting in the days sort of leading up to understand as much about what other clubs might do at their pick so that they can plan how they want to strategize over a 3 to 4 pick period. So it is really interesting. And as you said, over time, we're finding more and more. I think that Sean likes the bigger midfielders because they remind him of himself. The big 202 centimeter, 120 keg midfielder that Sean is.
I was never a midfielder, mate. I was just the angry full forward.
Yep. But yeah, no, you are right. And it's definitely plays into your strategies for drafting. How about you, Eddie and Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. I obviously we joke about it, but I know all of the players that Pete likes and Ed as well. So it's while I didn't have as much flex in terms of trading past Essendon's first 3 picks there, it was just interesting to sort of predict what was coming next, and a good exercise, I guess, for us that happens on the night. And clubs would have a rough idea of what other clubs, have in terms of their order. So yeah, it's that game of getting ahead and constantly trying to be proactive and make sure you're getting what you need before someone else does. It's big game of cat and mouse.
Yeah, it's very different trying to pick for certain clubs as well. Like so many clubs have totally different philosophies as well on how they draft. I mean, there's a lot of clubs that will take the best available in the top 10, some that will have to address needs. And in such an even crop like what I had a bit later with those Hawthorn picks, like I think you just got to take the best available in a lot of cases, especially in a year where we've had so many things happen. So you may not see a lot of those, we really needed this type of player, but they're probably just not going to get taken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, totally, guys. And look, thanks from us. Thanks again for joining us. This is, as I said, it's our favourite podcast for the year. And I'll do my best to edit the podcast and get it out tonight as well, or at least the first thing tomorrow morning. So we've got a couple of days before the draft. But thanks again for taking the time out and joining us. It's a really helpful exercise for us to start thinking about how it could pan out. But also, I know that the listeners really enjoy it. So thanks again.
Yeah.
Yeah, no worries at all. Obviously, yeah, it's our sort of favourite time of year as well. So, yeah, always fun to come on and do this sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. So, yeah, just thank you again. And probably time for us to wrap up, John.
Yeah, wrap us up, mate.
No sweat. So thanks to everyone for listening. We hope that after this, marathon 2-hour sprint that we've gone through, but I think this year's our deepest draft we've ever done. So we've gone right out to pick 53 this year, which is an excellent effort from all the guys. And we obviously have to thank the guys at Draft Central a lot for their tireless efforts over the year, and especially this year, given that for John and myself, we haven't been able to get out and watch as many games as we normally would and all that. We've certainly been following the updates and the all the nice little bits you get on the Draft Central website, from the power rankings right through to the game wrap ups and stuff, and even the player profiles. It's certainly helped my research a lot for this episode as well as this year. So well done, boys, and John, thank you as always for all your hard work, and we hope everyone who is listening is safe and enjoying and getting ready for Christmas, and more importantly, getting excited for the draft next week.
Yeah, totally, guys. Thanks again for listening. If you do want to check out, if you haven't for some reason heard of them before, jump on afl.draftcentral.com.au. It's honestly one of the best sources that you can actually find for real draft content. So jump on, follow the guys. They're really good. You can find them all on Twitter as well. And like us, follow us on Twitter, listen to the podcast, share the podcast. This is, if you're going to share a podcast with friends or with people that haven't heard it before, this is the one. So share around, and look forward to chatting and seeing on the other side of the draft how it all went.
All right. See you guys.
If you constantly worry that the worst is going to happen, you're not alone. 1 in 4 Australians will experience anxiety. Know when anxiety is talking. Visit Beyond Blue to start a life beyond anxiety.